Hi, everyone. Welcome to Two Guys Talking Sports. The college playoff semifinals have completed. There's one college football game left, which is the national championship. And unlike you, I'll start the show off by saying I was wrong. It's not going to be Alabama, Texas. I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. I know it takes you weeks after week after week.
Wow.
I'll just start it off with a bang.
Wow. I was going to save it when we talked about the game to kind of.
No, I like to get it on out there. You like to just harbor it until we just pull it out like a loose tooth, but I'm going to get it on out there.
We were both kind of wrong because I picked Alabama to win too. But,
yeah.
But you've been riding the Alabama train since the middle of the season.
Look, they still had a chance to win it, and we'll cover them in the second game. But they had a chance to win it. Let's start out Washington, Texas. I know that was the second game of the night.
Can we
at 9 o'clock at night?
Can we discuss how it's absurd that all year long college football is played majority of the time on Saturday nights?
Right.
You have outliers; they play on Thursday nights, Maction, Tuesday, Wednesday night, whatever. It's a crime that they play on a night where people have to go to work the next day, and the second game doesn't start till 9 o'clock. It didn't get over till almost 1 a.m.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And then the amount of commercials and stuff that they also pack into these specialty games, because like we've said, they're still trying to make as much money as possible.
I mean, they kick off. It comes back from a commercial. They kick off, go back to another commercial.
Right. You can't have these 4.5 hour spectacles with the commercials and stuff and start it at 9 o'clock at night. I know that works. That's all well and good for the West Coast, but the majority of especially in college football, the majority of your viewership comes from the East Coast and mainly in the South. And when you're starting them at 9 o'clock on a Monday night, and we got to go to work the next day, it's tough.
I was exhausted yesterday.
Yeah,
it was tough to wake up, and I just don't understand why they don't do it on Saturday nights.
Yeah, like Saturday night would be easier. It would be so much easier if you started the game on Saturday night at 9 o'clock. People wouldn't complain as much. But on a Monday night when you got work the next day, that's tough.
Yeah, no.
So Washington played Texas. I had Texas going and getting the win in this game. Washington prevails 37-31. I will say both of these games were very similar to last year, where they were nail biters.
They're the polar opposites, where the first game there was no offense.
Right.
Second game, it's all that was. And I mean, dude, Michael Penix, that's a dude right there.
Yeah, he was, a lot of people making the case that he should have won the Heisman. Obviously, numbers wise,
I think that's
Daniels
recency bias, because Jane Daniels didn't even play in his bowl game.
Right.
And then Michael Penix goes out and, just kind of has his way with Texas in the first half. And, mostly throughout the entire game, but he started out hot.
Yeah, and look, sometimes, and it's kind of the same thing with the NFL MVP race and stuff like that. Sometimes it's a recency thing for people's opinion. It's also like a quarterback like Michael Penix might not have these crazy numbers just because of the talent around him and maybe the run game that they have.
Yeah.
Versus where, Jalen Daniels, he's expected to just do it all.
Yeah.
And not quite as much talent around him. So it's kind of a catch-22 on that. But, it doesn't hurt to have a guy that could have won the Heisman on your team, especially when you are a team in the playoffs.
And we said when kind of discussing the Heisman Trophy, and then after Jane Daniels won, you could have made a case for everybody on that podium except Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah,
he should have never been on there. That's a different story. But yeah, between Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and Jane Daniels, honestly, you could have made a case for either three of them.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, with this game being so late, I didn't catch the end of it. I know, we got on here. There was some questionable decisions at the end. I'm pretty sure you stayed up to watch it.
I did. Yeah, I've had this feeling ever since like Muschamp was the coach at South Carolina. I don't get kind of going away from what's got you to that point in the game. Okay, look at it for this example. Washington obviously was winning. They won.
Yeah.
But their last drive of the game, I believe they ran it twice. Yeah. So they ran it twice, and Texas, I'm trying to remember exactly. but Texas only had to use one of their timeouts.
Right.
And then one of the plays, Washington actually just ran the ball, and then the running back got hurt and stopped the clock.
Yeah.
I mean, and it gave Texas a ton of time. In the grand scheme of time in sports, especially football, gave them a ton of time.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that play calling. People will question Sarkisian's play calls when they got down in the red zone. But, I mean, my thing is when people do that, what would you have called?
Yeah.
I mean, they did call a couple of dumb plays, but in terms of throwing it in the end zone, they were throwing it to their best jump ball receiver.
Yeah, and there was one, I know, there was a pass that Quinn Ewers, if he throws it about 12 inches a little bit lower, they win the game.
Yeah.
I mean, it was there. The receiver was open. He had an opportunity to try and catch it. It was a throw that sailed on him. You know, if he's able to drop, it wasn't like he was under pressure at the time. He just got to make that throw. Yeah. And, you know, also when it's coming down to the wire like that, the defense knows what you're doing. You're not running powers. You're not running quick slants and stuff like that. You're trying to throw the ball down the field. Yeah. So, of course, they sit back and, you know, you can call it a dumb play call, but sometimes it's just defenses are sitting back and no one's open. And you're forcing it, which makes it seem like it's dumb, but you're very limited in what you can do in those situations. And that's why they say no team is built to play from behind because you just don't have the play calls that are just going to, you know, when you're tied or when you have a lead or, you know, early on in the game, you can do plays that fool the defense. Yeah. But there's not really much you can do to fool the defense when they know, okay, they're down. It's, you know, only a certain amount of time on the clock. Yeah. They have to press the ball downfield. Okay, we'll just sit back. If they want to throw these little 5-yard routes and just nickel and dime down the field, that's fine, you know, because they're just going to burn the clock. And it's even harder to do, you know, in the red zone when the field shrinks. So
yeah, I know the first two plays on Texas's drives, Quinn Ewers and their tight end were not on the same page because he was throwing it. And Washington did a good job of getting pressure on Quinn Ewers the whole night. But then they had a big third down play. I mean, a big third down play. And I'm very surprised that DB let the Texas receiver get behind him. But sometimes you just can't beat speed because, I mean, Washington was playing aggressive. Right. They weren't doing that prevent defense. And, I mean, it almost bite them in the butt. But, you know, it's kind of like I said earlier, kind of like catch-22 where it's you don't go away from what you're doing, but doing what you're doing, being aggressive, can kind of hurt you in that situation and trying to find a medium ground.
It's the same thing on offense when you're trying to, you know, run the game out. You know, if you've been throwing all game, it's tough to say, okay, we'll keep doing what we've been doing because, if you have incomplete passes, that stops the clock. Yeah. He had 38 attempts. When you get into that 40 and 45 attempt range, the percentages of a chance for an interception go up drastically. Yeah. When you get closer to 50 attempts, it's just you're more than likely going to end up throwing an interception. Yeah. So, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to.
And I mean, credit to Texas because I mean they were down, I believe, 13 points. So I mean, give credit they did come back or try to make a comeback. But I mean, you couldn't ask for two better games. Right. Committee definitely got it right in terms of the teams.
And you know, look, Washington, you know, a lot of people would have left them out, but they've been battle tested, you know, with the 2 games at Oregon. And, you know, they proved that, you know, they deserve to be there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you like I said, Michigan and Washington were definitely the locks going into the selection. It was just the 3 and 4 seed that were the question marks.
Yeah. And speaking of Michigan, jumping into their game, 27-20 victory for Michigan. Went to overtime. Definitely some questionable calls in that one, in the overtime game. But like I said, this was a completely different game where it looked like nobody wanted to score for a little while.
Yeah, and you got to give credit to Michigan or to Jim Harbaugh and their defense coordinator. And his first name's slipping on me, but I believe his last name's Mentor. I mean, they put Jalen Milroe on his butt. Yeah. I think they had 6 total sacks. It was definitely it reminded me of like the old school national championship game. I shouldn't say old school because it's not old school,
Right.
but like when it was Alabama LSU playing for national championships and it was like 6-3.
Yeah.
That's what this game kind of
You
reminded
got
me
Greg
of.
McElroy going 7 for 13.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, dude, if Michigan didn't make some of these boneheaded mistakes, the muff punt that led to a touchdown. I mean, Alabama, they didn't really do too much on offense the entire game. It felt like to me.
And Michigan is a team where they're just outstanding on defense. They're not going to wow you with their offense, but their defense is going to give their offense enough opportunities to score and win the game. And that's pretty much what happened. I mean, Milroe was 16 of 23 for 116 yards.
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh called him the greatest quarterback in the history of Michigan football.
J.J. McCarthy. He said that about McCarthy.
Yes. Sorry.
But, I mean, it's kind of that they're that Big Ten, pedigree. What you normally see with Big Ten football teams is it's defense first.
Yep.
And then offense is complementary. But credit to their offense because, I mean, they made big-time drives when they needed to.
Yeah.
They could have kind of tucked their tails, between their butts after that muff punt. I mean, the first play from scrimmage, he threw an interception. Luckily, the DB wasn't, I guess, eligible.
Right.
But, I mean, that couldn't have been a worse start for them than the muff punt.
Yeah, I think if that is a clean interception and Alabama scores right there to start the game, that might be an entirely different game.
But, coming off the muff punt where Alabama scores, they have a big-time drive the entire length of the field. Excuse me. That was big for Alabama. The offense wasn't spectacular. Excuse me, but they showed up when they needed to.
Yeah, you get into overtime, and man, that last play was.
I mean, Michigan about screwed it up towards the end of the game.
Yeah,
they can't catch a punt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was.
I mean, he was 2 inches from that.
They
being a
need
safety.
to every day this week be working on punt return.
Or just don't even catch it. Just don't even catch it.
Yeah, just let it go. And if you get pinned on the one, you get pinned on the one. But
yeah, that whole series of events after that punt at the end, where Alabama did call a timeout.
Yeah,
Michigan stayed out of the end zone. Then Michigan called a timeout.
Right.
It was very odd. It's a very odd series of events that unfolded on that last drive.
Like you said, not very clean game from either side.
No,
just mistakes and question marks and
it was.
What's crazy is that's from probably 2 of the coaches that you would consider their teams to always be the most disciplined, always on point kind of teams.
And I mean, and honestly, Alabama had snapping issues the majority of the game. That's very odd. Like, even you could say it's Alabama and Nick Saban, but this is their 14th game of the season. Yeah. How are you still having snapping issues?
I think a lot of that is Alabama hasn't faced a defense like Michigan's where Michigan's defensive line is so good that center and normally when you see a center who's never had those issues before start having it multiple times during the game, it's because somebody's just on his ass right from the jump every time, and he's just trying to get that ball back as fast as possible to get to his block, and it's just not his clean fluid motion that he's used to. Yeah, and he's just basically flicking it instead of actually.
I think a lot of people, I mean, especially myself, and I'm sure you'll agree, I kind of wrote off Michigan a little bit. I kind of took it at, they don't play the toughest of schedules, but that defense is elite.
Yes.
I was very impressed. They kind of took Alabama. I mean, for majority of the game, Tommy Rees and their offensive staff, I don't think they really had an idea of what to do because, with Jalen Milroe, his forte is not his passing game. It's like his running ability kind of opens up his passing, passing game, and they could never really get him going on the ground. I think he had 21 rushes for 60 some odd yards.
Yeah. Sometimes we didn't realize how good or elite Michigan's defense was because their offense isn't stellar,
Yeah.
And like I said, their defense just gives them the opportunities to score enough to win the game.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, if they had, you know, a better offense, you would be seeing Michigan in a different light because their defense is just so elite. If they could just score, you know, 1.5 times as much.
They're not going to be in a game where they have to score a 30 to 40 point
Exactly.
game.
Now, I don't, you know, with Washington's offense, obviously they're probably a little bit more potent offense than Alabama. So that's definitely, now that you have gotten to this point and you see 1 versus 2 where you see, okay, one of the best offenses is going to play one of the best defenses.
Yeah. And I mean, Washington's defense isn't a slouch either. I mean,
so it's gonna kind of come down to, you know, an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
Yeah.
Who's gonna come out, and it's basically gonna be whose weakness actually becomes a strength.
Yeah. And Georgia's got to be kicking themselves for losing to Alabama in the SEC championship. Because I mean,
Georgia was the better team.
Yeah, Georgia's the better team. You can make the argument. I don't know if you can. Georgia, oh man, I think Georgia beats Michigan. Or excuse me, I don't think we have the matchups if Georgia wins.
Right.
Because I think it'd have been Georgia, Texas, and Michigan and Washington.
Right,
yeah, you got to be kicking yourself if you're Georgia. And I mean, speaking of Georgia, that Orange Bowl, oof.
We heard Florida State fans cry for weeks about how they're
still crying,
done wrong, and then you had your chance. And we said this whenever it all shook out at the beginning a few weeks ago. You know, we said, look, you're going to have your opportunity to go out there and say, look, we don't have our quarterback. We don't, you know, whatever. We deserve to be there. Okay, well, you have your chance because you're going to play a team that everybody still thinks probably deserve to be in the playoffs as well.
Yep.
Make it at least make it a game.
It was a game for like a quarter. It's a game for like a quarter.
Yeah, even if you don't win the game, at least make it competitive. And you go out there and get shellacked 63-3 to the point where Kirby Smart comes out at the end of the game. He was like, I felt bad for him.
I mean, I think Georgia had their fourth. Jackson Muschamp played. Will Muschamp's son. It was a preferred walk-on. I don't know if he's on scholarship now because
it was even more excuse from Florida State people that were just like, all right, well, we were out 25 or 27 people to injury or transfer or opt-outs.
So did Georgia.
Georgia had the exact same amount of players that were out either due to injury, opt-out, or transfer. The exact same number. So that's not an excuse either. Like you were not better than them.
And Florida State
even
fans
with Jordan Travis, you were not better than Georgia.
I mean, they were trying to troll Jalen Milroe for his yardage. And I mean, people were roasting him like, listen, if you'd have gone out and beat Georgia, you have a gripe. You truly do. But
even if you made it a game, but the thing is, that was the worst game.
Yeah, but guess what?
Bowls.
Every team outside of the four college football playoff teams deal with opt-outs.
Right. Those teams within it that had players, you know.
And here's my thing. This kind of pissed me off, and I'm anxious to hear what your take is on it. Okay, if you're a player that opts out of a game, okay, for whatever reason, you're going to the pro. You think it's best for you to not play, and then you are on the sidelines in like you've got your jersey on and whatnot. Those players should not be allowed on the sidelines.
Yeah.
And if you're hurt, that's one thing. But if you're like, listen, this game isn't that important to me. It's better for my career long term, which is completely understandable. Right. But seeing Keon Coleman, I'm pretty sure he was on the sidelines for Florida State. Brock Bowers was on the sideline for Georgia. I'm sorry, no, you're not coming on the sidelines.
I can see it, but I think some of it now is because these bowls just don't mean as much. Really and truly, the coaches only view them as getting extra practice for the guys that are coming back, or maybe the high school guys. I think that the coaches probably just kind of respect these players' decisions to sit, because in the grand scheme of things anymore, like the Orange Bowl, if it wasn't the national championship, it used to mean something.
I know, but
it just doesn't anymore.
But at the same time, it's like you clearly don't value it as like I don't know, like I don't know the word I want to say.
I see it kind of both ways because you still want to be because you're doing the best thing for you, but you still want to be there to support your boys that you
That
went
would
through
be
it
like
with.
somebody entering the transfer portal and then still being on the sideline for the bowl game.
Look, I have a gripe about one of those as well. You had a player for Clemson that entered the transfer portal, and he told Dabo, "Look, I know that my opportunity here is limited. It's just,
Yeah.
maybe this is too big of a school for me.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And so he wants to go seek an opportunity to play, but he told Dabo, I want to stay with the team through the bowl game, and then I will move on. I want to fulfill my commitment that I made to you as a player. I committed to you to play this year. I'm going to play this year, and then I'm going to seek another opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, Dabo, and I don't know 100% sure, so I don't want to say, but
he said no.
From all aspects, he didn't say no, but basically he made it a point every practice just beat him down, make him do extra work, just beat him to the point to where he quit.
Is that the
right?
ring
And his dad is a Clemson Hall of Famer who's coming out and who's saying all this.
I think the coach the father kind of blew it way out of proportion because just from what I've seen and read, because Dabo even talked about it, it was like a few select players, and I don't know like what the genesis behind doing what they were doing with these group of players, but from all accounts, like it wasn't that big of a deal. I think you just have a player or a parent that was a legend at that school, and maybe expects special treatment for his son.
Well, if there was any negative treatment, any different negative treatment, if there was, hey, you got to get the balls after practice, or you got to clean. If there was something that he normally didn't have to do, that was different in a negative way, then you're making it a point.
But he wasn't the only player that had to do this.
And he might not be, but he was.
It was a group of players.
But I think it was a player that he wanted to fulfill his commitment. That's what I think is the sucky part about it, is because he wanted to respect his teammates, his coaches, his commitment. It wasn't like he's saying, hey, I want to go make more money. I want to go to a different program because you guys aren't playing me. It was more or less like, I know that I'm not going to get the opportunity here, and that's fine. I realize my situation, but I want to fulfill my commitment. There should be no differential treatment, whatever that is.
And honestly, like,
and it might not be as bad as what they're saying.
I would love to pile on Dabo and Clemson as a game
right, and it might not be as bad.
I don't, from all, like, because it's not even a thing anymore. I think the father may have blown it out of proportion.
Right.
I don't think it wasn't a singular thing where it's like you, Steven, do all this stuff.
Right.
It was like a group of players, and it was. And Dabo talked about it, and I wish if I knew we were going to talk about it, because I'd have reviewed the clip. But I don't think it's as big as a deal as this father made it out to be. But obviously, you're going to want to look out for your child.
Yeah. I think that this is a situation that this transfer portal is bringing in, and like, I mean, you sent me the clip of Dan Orlovsky talking about what he would change. The portal shouldn't open until the season is over, and
that's what he kind of echoed what Kirby Smart talked about, where it's like there has to be almost like a free agency period, right. Especially if you're going to have all of these bowl games.
Yes.
I mean, and I was going to talk about this with Will when we interviewed him last week, but Zeb had to, honestly, we could have talked for hours, I think. But I think they need to, and he brought up a point where he thinks they need to reshape the way they do bowl games.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't care to see a 6-6 Central Michigan team play a 7-5 Troy team when they don't play anybody. He was like, I would much rather see a 5-7, I'm just going to say South Carolina versus a 5-7 Duke, or the Duke didn't go 5-7, but a team that plays excuse me, like big time football.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be more competitive because these smaller schools, their players are already in the portal.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like, I think there's way too many bowl games, and
There's
they're
too
never
many
going to get
bowl
rid of them
games.
because of the TV deals. But they need to reshape the way they're going to do it because, like I said, and I understand Florida State fans' gripes because they did have a lot of players opt out.
Yeah.
But guess what? They were a team that's built off the transfer portal,
Yes.
whereas like Georgia they do utilize the portal, but they
build
are
on
built
recruiting.
off their high school football recruiting. And guess what? When they had Brock Bowers opt out, guess what? They had another 4-star, 5-star in the wings ready to go. Florida State did not.
Yeah.
They had, players.
Here's the thing: is teams like that, teams that are like the legit contenders every year, they can lose a player and just replace them.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily to say, okay, you got, Brock Bowers is going to be a top 10 pick most likely. Not that you can just immediately replace him with that a player of that caliber, but someone pretty close. Whereas Florida State, you lost your main player and your quarterback, and you had one that wasn't even remotely close.
Yeah. And it is tough with quarterback. Like, that's the one position where there's normally a huge drop-off in production. But
Right.
I think,
there's a lot that needs to be changed because, like you said, it's hurting the teams that are in these bowl games. It's hurting viewership. You want to keep the people watching, but nobody wants to watch teams, like you said, that they don't know. And also the teams that, they do know, and you have 15 opt-outs. Nobody knows who's playing. Even a team that might have been 10-2 this year, if they lose 8 starters to opt-outs or transfer portals, that's a completely different team.
Yeah.
Even if the player behind them is legit, that's still a completely different team.
Yeah. And you're seeing it now where there's players that's played for Alabama that's entering the portal now after the semifinal game. I know there's a couple players that have entered from Georgia after the Orange Bowl. I just think it goes back to the NCAA not having a clue what they're doing because they just like have fun, free reigns. And I don't know if I've ever said this on this show, but I truly believe within the next decade, college football is not going to be a part of the NCAA. These big Power 5 conferences are all just going to split off, do their own thing. They're going to let the commissioner, and they need to come up with some set of rules and guidelines for this transfer portal, for the NIL era in terms of like salary caps and whatnot. Like, honest to God, especially with all these opt-outs, these NIL deals need to be made public.
Yeah. It's just, with any professional sport, most sports have a salary cap. Most sports have, or all sports have.
And you know what these players are getting paid.
A period of you can't. It's a free agency period. It's you can't become a free agent until this date, and it's always after the season.
Yeah.
There's certain guidelines and dates, and most of them have salary caps. And like you said, even the ones who don't, you can go and find out exactly what every single player is making.
And I think the tampering that's a big deal.
And the other thing is with college sports is most of this money is coming from donations.
Yeah.
In professional sports, it's not. It's coming from what they make as a team.
Yeah.
Between ticket sales and concessions, jersey,
Just
whatever,
revenue generated.
or whatever a team makes. Versus college, it's not any of that. It's based on what's donated or what donors, specifically. It's just a mess, and there's nothing good about it, and nobody likes it. I mean, and you have, this morning there was a clip from Beamer who's talking about a player. I think this was a clip from last year. It was like, I got a text from a recruit that said that he would die for this university. And he literally just transferred yesterday.
If that's what he was talking about, which I think people are putting two and two together. Yeah. And Brad Crawford from 24/7 Sports put this out. He's like, do not get attached to these players because he's like, they are essentially mercenaries.
Right.
And again, there's nothing wrong with that. And I even saw something I was scrolling through Twitter last night. Billy Donovan, who coaches professional basketball, but got his big start at Florida. and he doesn't like it because it just creates like an easy escape route for these players when they face a little bit of adversity.
Yeah.
And I agree. You know,
It's not setting them up for, especially these top tier players who have transferred multiple times, or done all these things, and then you get into the NFL, bro. When you sign a 4 or 5 year contract, it don't matter if you happy, sad, mad, whatever. You signed a 4-year contract. You with that team unless they decide that they're getting rid of you.
And I was reading a story from 24/7 Sports talking about one of the Stone Blanton who entered the transfer portal, and I don't know if they were talking about him in particular or if it was just the family, but reading the negative tweets and like comments that are made about him, and I mean I'm a big proponent of. Listen, I'm all for griping, but like at the end of you need to kind of watch what you say to these student athletes because they still are kids.
Yeah.
But again, if you're gonna,
they're kids that are making more than most.
But
of
if
the
you're
people,
gonna get in your feelings about it, you might be in the wrong profession because I mean,
it's tough.
Well, especially now because I mean. Because normally you can transfer once, and then you can transfer
as a grad.
As a graduate,
but now you can. You can do more.
As of now, because a court ruling. So yeah, it's dude. Honestly, we could talk for hours about the transfer portal.
We can do a whole episode.
There
on
definitely
that
needs to be changes and regulations put in place,
but
to kind of help.
That's the thing. It's like everybody can give their opinion. Everybody can give all of these very well thought out opinions on what should be changed, how to change it. They're just not. You let the cat out of the bag. You can't get them back
hard
in
to close
now.
It. Yeah,
it's tough. Unless you slowly do it, but we'll talk recruiting and portals and all. We'll dive into all that with South Carolina and Clemson, especially.
Who do you think is going to win the national championship?
Michigan.
Do you?
Michigan is favored 4.5. Again, this is on a freaking Monday night. At least it starts at 7:30, but still.
But coverage, that's coverage, so it'll probably start a little after 8.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous,
bro.
Dude.
I mean,
like college football is built on Saturdays. Like that's what you know college football to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get they're trying to capture.
They'll never be able to go back to Saturdays now, though.
No,
because now the NFL's taking over Saturdays this time of year. You'll never be able to recapture that.
No, I'm torn. Honestly, dude, I think Washington has a good chance.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good game.
If they can get their offense going. Michigan's not built to have these. I mean, they very well could. They haven't had to do it this year.
Yeah.
I mean, they did against TCU last year, but
Michigan's not built to come back.
And they're not built for just shootout games.
Right.
Just shootout games. So if Michael Penix can get going early and sustain that success, I think Washington wins. I'm going with Washington.
I think it could go either way. I think it's like you said, it's going to come down to which weakness can overcome the other strength.
Yeah.
I think that it's always easier if your strength is offense to overcome an elite defense.
Yeah.
Because you can dial up so many motions and rubs and all kinds of things that offensive coordinators can do now. Yeah, there's more weapons. There's more things you can do.
And going back to the Michigan-Alabama game, Michigan's offense coordinator called a good game. Because, they were running plays, and there were several instances where Alabama's defense was getting confused.
Michigan is going to have to find a way to score because and score in bunches, I think, because, like you said, Washington, they can score it. And if they start rolling.
Yeah, they're tough to stop.
Yes.
They're tough to stop. But I'm going with Washington.
I'm going to take Michigan.
Go with the Huskies.
I wonder how much Prez is going to bet on this one. Bet $1 million on Michigan, Alabama.
I don't think he's going to bet as much this time as he did because I think he did it for the sole purpose of it's Alabama, SEC.
Right.
That's a...
Can you imagine, though, betting $1 million?
Just to win $1 million?
Just to know that you have $1 million that you could just piss away. On a football game.
And I don't even think he clearly has a lot of money.
Right.
But dude, $1 million's $1 million. That's not that would be like me, betting $500
Here's the other thing
on
is
something.
like a little bit of that is like he's also generating money, talking about it with his clips. And so he's it's not truly betting $1 million. It's still a lot of money, but it's not quite $1 million. But But like they said on the show, like Drake posts $20,000 bet slips. Like, yeah, look how much money I'm spending. And
Must be
Preston's betting
nice.
$1 million.
Must be nice.
I'm gonna go with Michigan though. I think that Washington will score, but Michigan will find a way to score with them enough, and Michigan will make a stop at the end.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a really good game.
I think the spread is pretty much on point. 4.5 for Michigan. I think it'll be less than a touchdown.
Because we're recording this on Wednesday, so clearly a lot can change between now and Monday. But yeah, Michigan's going to be the favorite heading into this game. But don't count out Washington.
No,
I like Kalen DeBoer. He's a good coach.
I think it'll be. I don't think it'll be like last year's national championship where it was absolute blowout.
Georgia was just a wreck in training. I don't think anybody was going to slow them down.
I agree. All right. Well, we will be
week.
back to recap that. We might dive a little bit more into the portal recruiting situations.
Yeah, that's gonna have to be a separate episode because that can be that can go a long time.
You're right. All right. We'll see you then.
See y'all. Thank you.